If you don't have time to grind and you want to buy a stacked account in 2K with max badges, a nice record, and a high overall, hit up sportstnb.com. The link is on the screen, and you can find the link in both the comment section and in the description.
How about it, 16? Want to go knock some heads?
No.
So just like that, we've got one of the weirdest, most unpredictable series going on, and I tweeted out last night, like, we've reached a point where we're talking about the Warriors not having enough firepower to keep up in a game. And so last night opened, and the Warriors were missing Kevon Looney, who is now out with a fractured collarbone, something to that sort. They're still missing Kevin Durant, who has a mystery calf/Achilles injury, because I don't know, I'll get to that in a second. That whole thing is screwy. And then you got Klay Thompson, who actually wanted to play last night, but the Warriors took the gamble and said it's not worth it because his mildly strained hamstring, which I do want to note that they called Kevin Durant's calf injury initially a mild calf injury, and we see how that's turned out. But anyways, yeah, they said it was a mild hamstring injury for Klay, but that it could get worse, so they didn't want to just risk this all in one game because obviously the Warriors feel like if their health is where it can be during the series, a 2-1 deficit is nothing that they can't overcome. And so yeah, that took us to last night, where I believe Steph Curry had the most predictable 50-point game in NBA history. Yes, I know it wasn't 50, it was 47, I'm just rounding. But in the first quarter of that game, me and my friend are watching it, and I saw just 2 of the shots Curry hit, and I told him, I was like, oh, Steph is going for 45 tonight. And it was extremely predictable because if you looked at the Warriors depth chart, it looked crazy. They were starting Sean Livingston at shooting guard, and then you got Iguodala in as well. So the only person who could consistently knock down perimeter shots for the first time in I don't know however was Steph Curry. And I knew right then, for them to even have a chance, he was pretty much going to have to play the entire game, and he was going to have to carry most of the offense. Now, I will tell you the part about that game that really caught my attention. It was that the Raptors really needed most of the game to pull away, even with the Warriors looking how they look. Even though they could pay more attention to Steph Curry, and you don't ever have to worry about a Livingston 3. These days, you don't even have to worry about a Draymond Green 3. I don't know what happened to that because he was not always this terrible of a shooter. But even with all of that, the game really never felt out of reach until the very end. And that was concerning because that's the thing that makes this series just super duper unpredictable. At this point, we're looking and saying, okay, Klay Thompson, he really wanted to go last night, so he is probably going to go on Friday. We don't know what he's going to look like on the defensive end. I'm assuming that's where the hamstring would affect him most. But still, even just having him on the floor changes the game. But then there's the wild card of Kevin Durant. I'm going to tell you, my opinion changed. It changed because I saw him on 2 different occasions last night. I think I saw him at the beginning of the game walking. Then I saw him at the end of the game greeting everybody in the tunnel. And at least to me, I'm not a doctor, but at least to me, he does not seem to be walking like somebody who is about to enter a final series and take over. On the first footage that I saw, it kind of seemed like he was wobbling a bit. He was not walking. He did not have a very strong walk to him. And on the second one, he had a thick ice pack on his calf and Achilles area. I didn't make too much of that. People are, again, out with the conspiracies and everything, and I'm just not one of them. But even then, he was kind of limping back, and it could be, again, you have this thick ice pack on your leg, so you're not walking normally. That would hinder how you walk trying to keep it on. But whatever, my whole point with this is the game is tomorrow. There is only a 1-day break. Klay might be back. Is KD going to be back though? And if he is he going to be like KD? Because this injury seems a lot worse than we initially thought. And so that's making this series nearly impossible to predict because on one hand, there's a crowd that thinks the Raptors should be up 3-0 right now. They feel like in game 2, if they could have just made 3 more shots in that stretch where the Warriors went 18-0, and then in the fourth quarter when they just missed so many makeable shots, there's people that feel like they could easily be up 3-0 right now. But then you go to last night's game, and the fact that there was so many absences, and it still took the Raptors that long to put them away, it makes you wonder, okay, we've seen what they look like when it's just Klay Thompson on the floor. The Warriors are clearly capable of getting a game, or getting multiple games, winning the series or whatever. And then you imagine Kevin Durant being back on the floor too, and it's like, how would the Raptors handle that? But then where would KD be though? Where would he be in terms of impact on this series? Because injuries can impact anybody. And speaking of that, I have some words about DeMarcus Cousins. Because Cousins played an enormous role in game 2. His activity, he was everywhere. He was a very crucial part for them being able to squeak by. And then in game 3, not so much. Coming into that game, I thought, okay, maybe they're going to lean on him a little bit more, because you saw during the season that he was a potential post option for them when they were first acclimating him into the offense. You saw some areas where it's like they might, throw the ball down to him. And there was a game where Kevin Durant was missing against the Rockets, and that was Cousins' best game. So I thought last night, like, maybe they're going to go through Cousins a little bit more, but again, just like I said with the injuries, he missed like a month and a half with the quote unquote torn quad, because I still don't understand how he was able to play again this season. But yeah, he missed time with that, so clearly his conditioning is not the same. Nothing is where it needs to be for him to have a major impact in a bigger role. So I guess that's probably why they weren't going to him a whole lot. And you can see it last game on defense as well. He was late to a lot of things on defense. Clearly this is not DeMarcus Cousins. And see, that originally didn't matter because they had Kevon Looney. Looney was giving the Warriors some really good minutes in this playoffs. He was integral for them in the Rocket series. Just his whole activity, he was really coming up during this postseason for the Warriors, and that was very important with the way their depth chart looked. With him gone, with him no longer being an option, and Cousins coming back from the quad injury, and we probably shouldn't expect that he's going to fill any kind of star role, any kind of second option role. That's what made last night just a gimme for the Raptors. And it's funny because I was scrolling Twitter and looking at people's takes, and I saw people really trying to overcomplicate this thing. Like, I saw one tweet talking about how, oh, everyone's being dramatic, saying the Raptors have to win tonight because any team can beat any team on any given night, whether they're weaker, they're stronger, whatever. To me, that was just an overcomplicated take. The fact of the matter is, when you are starting Sean Livingston at shooting guard and not Klay Thompson, that is a gigantic drop-off. When Iguodala is starting and he's usually backing up Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, that is a giant drop-off. When you're relying on Draymond Green to take some threes, that's a gigantic drop-off. So yes, technically any team can beat any other team on any given night. We saw the Magic win game 1 against the Raptors. Okay, that's cool, we get that. But the Raptors being in the position where they literally let game 2 slip through their hands. Last night absolutely was a must win, because it's not that they had zero chance to ever get a game off the Warriors if Klay and KD were on the floor. I think that starts messing with you mentally when you lose to a team that's like a shell of themselves, and then you're on the road as well, so you have another game you have to win on the road against them when they're going to get some of these guys back potentially. Yeah, I just didn't understand the overcomplicated take there about any team can beat any team. We get that. Last night was a must win though, and the Raptors accomplished it. That's the bottom line. If the Raptors lost last night, I think I would have turned all my attention towards free agency, because this shit would have been over. So anyways, I found all the narratives very hilarious last night too, because you knew they were coming. Last night was like the first time I think in the Golden State Dynasty era where you could look at it and say, oh, Curry doesn't have enough help. And that ran in multiple different directions. That ran into comparisons from LeBron, and then people going through and saying, oh, he still had 2 All-Stars. And this comes after a season of calling Draymond Green trash and looking at DeMarcus Cousins and trying to pretend he's anything near what he was last season. I had a very swell time reading all the narratives, but I don't want to dive into all the trash that comes from that. Actually, I want to point you in the direction of what people were saying about Steph Curry. Because although he performed last night, he had his 47 points, he was really the only reason that they were in the game up until, like the fourth quarter. Like, it really, the momentum of the game never completely shifted to the Raptors until the end. But do you remember the barbershop talks I was making probably about 2 months ago, where, of course, Kevin Durant leaving has been a huge topic this entire season, and we were having the discussions about Steph Curry being the greatest point guard of all time and where he ranks and all of that. And one thing I said is I knew the storyline is going to arise eventually if Kevin Durant leaves. The storyline is going to be Steph again. The storyline is going to be, what does he do without an overpowered team? What does he do without a team that really can't lose? Because that's what they've been for the last 2 years. Unless there's been some injuries, they haven't really had a realistic chance of losing. And that's what we see right now. Again, in a game with the Raptors with multiple pieces missing, to most people means if they were healthy, this series would probably heavily favor the Golden State Warriors. But anyways, the Warriors lost last night. Curry had his great game, but still, I saw the takes come out. Oh, this is what Steph Curry looks like when he doesn't have XYZ, you know, they name Klay Thompson, KD, whoever. Oh, this is what it looks like when he doesn't have that much help. He's great, but did they win? Oh, how does it feel, Steph? Now you know what LeBron feels like. All of that came out last night, and I'm telling you, if Kevin Durant is to leave this summer, if the Warriors are not nearly as good as they have been, You heard it here first, Steph is going to come back into question because even if they win this year, if they win their 4th championship or whatever happens, it's going to come into question not how great he is because that's been proven, but what was the alternate reality where the Warriors didn't get Kevin Durant and the team had to rely on Steph a bit more, and they weren't unbeatable. I've maintained this forever that next season, should Kevin Durant do what we hope he does, it's going to be big for Steph. And you're already seeing rumblings of that right now. So while we're on the topic of narratives, this is also going to get pretty interesting because if the Raptors do become champions, I wonder how people are going to handle what's happened with Golden State given their history of how they've gotten their championships. It's a very popular thing for people to look at 2015 and say Kyrie and Love weren't there, then to look at last year and say what happens if Chris Paul doesn't go down, even though I think they kind of came and corrected that this year when they didn't even have KD and they were still able to finish off the Rockets. Not the same team, but still I think they did themselves a favor there. But anyways, this series, I'm getting a hunch that nobody cares how the Warriors lose. They've seen them win for so long, people have hated them for so long, people have talked about them ruining the NBA. I'm getting the sense that nobody is going to give Golden State that benefit of the doubt and say, oh, well, Klay Thompson and KD and Kevon Looney were missing one game. Their bench, they were running one of the guys you don't even ever see, and he was on the floor in a finals game. Alfonso McKinney getting minutes. He can knock down some shots sometimes, but finals minutes. I'm talking about finals minutes. In the eyes of most people, I'm assuming that they don't give two shits that Kevin Durant is not there because I think that that's looked at as evening the series. So KD's not there, now this is two great teams playing each other. KD is there, now the Warriors are overpowered. So I get the sense that people really don't care at all about the Kevin Durant factor. But there's a lot of injuries going on after that too that I think people are never going to mention because it's the Warriors. And that does make me wonder about the Kawhi Leonard free agency decision because he sees what we see. And what we see is that if the Warriors were running out a fully healthy lineup right now, this thing might be over. The Warriors really might have a commanding lead on this series right now. And that makes me wonder, does he look at the Raptors even if they win this series and think to himself that he can go find a better situation? But then, attached to that, I wonder, do you judge the Raptors' ability to contend and win a championship off of their potential ability to be a healthy Warriors team? Should anybody hold themselves to that standard? Because A, we don't even know if Kevin Durant is going to be there this summer, so maybe that's something he looks at. But B, if you can't beat a healthy Warriors team, that doesn't really reflect on you as a team or how good you are, your ability to contend. Because really, there's not a whole lot of moves that you could make that would help you beat a healthy Warriors team. In most scenarios, that's not really a realistic thing. So do you even judge your situation off that? Is it more important that you were able to conquer the East and really handedly beat the East best team in the Milwaukee Bucks? Because that is a more realistic measuring stick, and it's very hard to leave a team after you win a championship. That's a really, really difficult thing to do. What about Kevin Durant? If the Warriors lose, if you're KD, by the way, let's say you're Kevin Durant and you don't come back this series at all. We know players have egos, right? They all grew up being the best on a certain team. They all grew up being the man. And if you're a player as important as KD, how does it reflect on you if one of your 3 championships comes in a series that you didn't even play in? Let's just say hypothetically he does not come back, because right now we don't know. This series is going on, and KD, from the footage I saw, I don't understand how he'd be ready to play tomorrow. Who knows, but do you even want a 3rd championship ring? Because you'd be the only player in history of his caliber to have a championship that you didn't set foot on the court for. That looks really strange. But if the Warriors don't win, does that make him feel like, oh, he can just come back because the job wasn't finished, they didn't get a 3rd championship, the team lost? Does that make him feel more comfortable in coming back this summer? I don't know, I'm just spitballing, honestly. I'm just looking at some of the potential implications on players through this series, and it's gotten very interesting. It's my belief that the Warriors are so beaten up right now that if the Raptors take a 3-1 series lead tomorrow, regardless of what happens, regardless of who comes back, I think they win the series, because this is still a team when they're at their best. They are really, really good, and let's say they went up 3-1 and KD came back game 5, that'd be an incredible comeback one way or the goddamn other. This is a guy who hasn't played in about a month now, so I'm looking at this thinking, really, really, really big game for Toronto tomorrow. Take both games in Golden State in the NBA Finals. You can't rest, the job's not done, but I think they get a very, very big leg up. Let me know what you think about this final series in the comment section, or anything that I've said here. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.